Ganga. So
Sure.
thank you everyone for joining in. And we today have Ganga Prabhakar with us to talk about her entire journey of coffee mechanics. She has a lot of different arms of the business as well. And the reason we're calling this talk, a vertical integration seed to cup kind of a talk is because she is essentially working throughout the supply chain. And there's a little introduction that I have for her. And if you're able to, so I'm going to just do a small introduction about her. So Ganga is a fifth generation coffee grower with essentially their entire business strategy believes in being a sustainable, quality focused, traceable business. She also has established a specialty startup, which is a farm to cup format, and it conceptualizes the entire setup. Also has a micro roastery and an experience center. It's also the coffee experience and the roastery is known as Coffee Mechanics. She's co-founded it with her husband and a few others, I believe.
Yeah.
Her husband, which essentially emphasizes on specialty single estate coffees, and obviously the third wave coffee culture. She's co-founded Agma Sustainable Coffee, an initiative towards making coffee community value-based, quality defined, and most importantly, it is sustainable in every step of the value chain. So over the years, majority of the contribution as an entrepreneur has been in coffee quality, artisan roasting, product development, brand management, marketing, to reach a relevant segment in the market. And essentially, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, this has been a bit of a, yeah. So, yeah, sorry. And she's been in the industry for almost 8 years and she's got brand experience of brand management, advertising, marketing, expertise in branding, digital marketing, and marketing strategy. So the reason we are talking to Ganga today is because she is a part of the entire supply chain and she understands different parts of the supply chain very well. I think Ganga, can you hear? Can you hear?
We can hear you, Komal.
Okay,
we can hear you.
Sorry.
Thank you so much for the introduction.
Yes, so she's been an amazing. I think I know her for the last 2 years now since we started South India Coffee Company, and we've always been in touch and been wanting to do different things, and we have very similar visions of what we want to do with Indian coffee. And here we are talking about essentially a vertical integration of the entire system. So Ganga, thank you for joining us. And please tell us a little bit more about how the journey started, what you really do, and over to you.
Thank you, Komal. Thank you so much for that elaborate introduction. Thank you very much. And I'm so happy to be on on this chat, and as much as possible we'll try and keep it as casual as possible, and be interactive, so that please jump in and ask questions wherever wherever necessary, and I'll be happy to answer every point of it. For us, for me, it was really it's really vague if I tell you that the intention of starting off wasn't really where we are today. With Coffee Mechanics, when we the initial part, because I also come from a branding background and a marketing background, the initial idea was just to sort of package the coffees that we grow and sell them.
Yeah.
So that was the only sort of understanding that we had, because I come from a coffee growing family, and apart from that part of the industry, I was what I'd learned with the years. I was a lot in farming specifically. There was not really much else to it.
Yeah.
And the specialty coffee culture at that time when we started, which is about 4.5 years back, was fairly non-existent, I could say. So we didn't have much of an option, or much of the roasters or specialty coffee or quality coffee is something that never saw what we are seeing today. So it was essentially just about, it began with just seeing how we could add value to what we are doing. So one thing led to another, and then we decided, okay, let's start off with getting it outsourced, the roasting, and let's see how that goes. And then that always led us to something that we weren't happy about. So we got a small roaster, started roasting ourselves. So it's really has been very organic, to say the least. But I must say that it has taught us every step of, the very minute level of, steps that are involved in, that is required to make a vertical integrated a company. What we started off doing with.
Shilpa, sorry. Ganga?
Hello?
Ganga? Sorry, can you hear?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Can you just repeat the last part of it, because we lost you in the last bit?
All right. So I think I was just saying that how it started off with, just adding value to what we do as growers, and then, trying to do every little bit on our own to sort of maintain that quality, because since the market was not readily there was no ready set process already. So we sort of, started doing everything on our own to get the quality that we sort of had in mind.
Okay.
So, which was the intention of, which is what, when we began Coffee Mechanics.
So tell us like a little bit about so tell us about the cafe and the roastery, and what kind of coffees do you roast over there, and what do you serve over there?
To begin with, our focus initially was to get an understanding of our, like you would understand this, not all producers firstly know how their coffees are and how they taste, or how. So we took a good 1 year to change a lot of. We understood that there's a need to change a lot of our processes. So before, and we realized that was a market that we could, in a larger sense, for the coffee community, that we could do.
Yeah.
And we decided to start off with our own plantations, in a very small way.
Yeah.
So we started with taking care of the processing to begin with, and then tasting our own coffees, roasting them to different profiles. That's essentially what we were sort of bringing at Coffee Mechanics. And for us, because we were not from the cafe or restaurant background.
Yeah.
So it's something that we were doing at, for the beginning. And for us, it was very, very different. It was not even meant to be a cafe. It was just meant to be a tasting room where people come taste different coffees. It's just a platform that we wanted to create for people, for different coffees, for different producers. One, for the producers to understand their coffees, where we could help them, relate. But it has the long journey in
Sorry about that, guys.
no
These
problem.
of being on the estate.
Not a problem.
Right. So yes, Ganga. Sorry about that. You were saying.
So yeah, I think so. That's pretty much it. So Coffee Mechanics as a place just gave us that platform, and also interacting with people really helped us understand if we are headed towards the right direction. Because at the time that we started, there was not really professional courses as such to move towards specialty or move towards quality in any terms. So it was pretty much self-learning and a lot of research, a lot of trials. So Coffee Mechanics as a roastery and as a place, it really helped us get a view of what consumers are looking for, what they value, what they don't.
This
So
is
that's
very
something that we
interesting. Yeah. So I think that's something that we. So I guess my next question would be that when you started, like you said, there wasn't much out there in terms of specialty coffee or third wave. The culture was just starting up in India. So what did you kind of, what led you to jump into it, to start something like, doing a third wave, having a roastery? And it's not a small investment, it is a large investment in the first part of it. Secondly, you didn't have the experience of owning a cafe, running a cafe. How did you go about that, and what were the challenges you had with that? And the third part of the question is, you have seen these trends, so I want you to talk to us about it from when you started till now.
Well, so
There are lots of questions. Sorry, but I think we start with the first bit.
yeah, no, I think when we started off, like I think it was just an entrepreneurial side to me, where I wanted to do something more than what I was already doing. I was working as at an ad agency, and with different brands, and so somewhere along I wanted to do something on my own, and there was a lot of a lot of my heart probably was in the farming, in the plantation from where I come.
Mm-hmm.
So and to be very honest, in the whole list of things that I'm sure every entrepreneur had that list of 100 business ideas, and coffee was last.
Yeah.
So so it was never sort of a thing, but I was quite keen on changing the way or giving a try to what I wanted, what I thought that should change in terms of how the market works, or how technically to find value for the produce that we grow, and in the process, if we could add or help in a couple of more growers who can come in. And I think one thing that I really trusted at that time, at least, was I knew that there was a lot of passion towards understanding and towards finding a solution, because coffee producing is otherwise not a very sustainable business, as opposed to what people might think from outside. So so for me to sort of try and work that whole thing around and try to make sense of what value add that we could bring is something that was really motivating to start off with. And marketing is something, or trying to get to the market, is something that I was confident on.
Yeah.
And I think with my husband, who's also a lot who has a experience in quality and manufacturing, these kind of things. So we thought, we could sort of probably get somewhere, or put a lot of processes that could work in a long So that is one part of it which really motivated us to start something like this and create an education. We knew that we were not yet ready. Our market was not yet ready for this, to be very, very honest. We thought the real market for it would be probably 10 years from now, from the time that we started. And we said, okay, let's start it small, and it is going to take a long, long time for us to get where we want to be, and for people to accept coffees without chicory to begin with.
Yeah.
So when I hear people home brewing, and when I see the excitement around specialty coffee, it's really refreshing. It's really promising. It's really very motivating for us to see that happening. But yeah, I think that's like I said, we didn't really see that. We thought the process is going to be slower than what it is.
So I think, like, so when you started the cafe, what were the challenges like? What was it that you decided, okay, we want to, when you opened it, it was more like you said, it was a cafe, it was a tasting experience. I remember coming to you, and it really was a lovely tasting experience. Like you brewed us this lovely coffee, and the place is really well done, and the interiors are really welcoming, so you really want to feel like, you feel like, oh, this is amazing, and then you do have a cup of coffee and it's lovely. So when you started it, what were the trends that you saw? Were there a lot of people who came and saying that, oh, I just want a black coffee or a cappuccino, or did they know about all the other kind of brewing methods, and now you're slowly seeing the change where a lot more people are asking for different types of brew methods?
No. So I have to tell you that, it's the time that we started off, and, we were in that, like I keep saying, that we were really excited about so many things that we were learning every day.
Yeah.
So it was a super exciting time for us. And also, I think it was a terrible experience for our customers. In a way, I mean, not in a way where even if one person walks in, we used to be like, oh, this is how you should have your coffee, and this is how it is supposed to be, and this is not good, and that is not. They're very opinionated in a certain sense. So I keep saying this, it is also called, I keep mentioning this quite often, it's the Dunning-Kruger's effect. So when I see a very, very excited and very opinionated, oh, this estate is good and this estate is bad sort of an opinion, I was like, okay, this is the Dunning-Kruger effect. This person has just started learning.
Yeah.
So it somewhere has taught us that every estate is different. Every roaster or every person who's involved in this process is very different and is coming from a very different perspective.
Absolutely.
And how we appreciate that, or even a coffee drinker for that matter. For us, at that point, we kept telling people, you should try a light roast, and you should have it black, and you should have. So, but we realized that there are milk coffee drinkers who are as passionate about coffee and who love coffee as much as, some of us who drink black coffees. So that way we sort of sobered ourselves down, and we said, okay, this is a different category, that's a different category, and we have to know how to appreciate each of them in a different way and for what they are.
Certainly.
So, yeah, that is something that we learned after a while, and we said, okay, so now we need to calm down.
Yeah, I think that happens with us as growers and as probably as coffee drinkers. We all are like, oh, we kind of need to tell the other person, but no, I mean, it's, and I have gotten into a lot of these arguments at times on LinkedIn or wherever they may be, saying that there was a cafe who was basically decided not to serve any milk and sugar in their cafe itself. Now, so they kind of made this entire thing about, we want to serve our coffee like this, and you should just drink it like this. But as a consumer, I am not ready to be that adventurous. Right. So I am used to drinking it with milk or sugar. So I think it's fair enough to give your opinion, saying that, yeah, it's okay. We would the best recommended way of drinking it is X. But if you want, it's your decision, because you can try it like
Right.
this, and then you can go into the next this thing. So I kind of got into this heated argument on LinkedIn the other day.
Absolutely. No, I think I completely agree with you. It's like, I keep giving a comparison of how, we as Bangaloreans, especially, we're so spoiled for different types of craft beers,
Yeah,
where we get into the Hefeweizens to, to a stout to whatnot, depending on what we like on our palate, or even to that matter, whiskeys.
yeah,
If you like, it's single malts to whatever else, to blends and different things. But I think you can't ignore the fact that a cocktail has a place of its own, and so that's where I sort of place in every argument, like you say, that I keep having this thing that if coffee is so personal, if I enjoy it a certain way and a certain other person enjoys it a certain different way, it's totally fine, and I think it should be acceptable for what it is.
yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit more about your how did you get into roasting? Have you take what is it that you've learned in terms, and what are you taking away from from your own estates, which have certain coffees, and you kind of translate them into the best cup that is for your roastery. So tell us a little bit about roasting your coffees or
Yeah.
roastery itself.
So one thing about roasting that we sort of figured in a way was, uh, for different coffees, and for even coming from a single place, how a different estate or different side of a hill would make so much of a difference in just in terms of microclimate.
Yeah.
So that's where the roaster really, really plays a role of trying to bring the best out of that particular bean. So it could even mean that your neighbor, an ex estate, his neighbor would probably have a different practice, and the developments and just the microclimate over there could be so much different. So just trying and identifying what suits best and what type of what sort of how do you make that to taste to its best ability is what, according to us, is roasting supposed to be. And so essentially trying to bring the best of that particular produce and a good representation of that coffee. So I think even when I was learning roasting from I think Steve Diedrich, who's who's the maker of Diedrich, and it was fascinating for me to see how open-minded he is as a roaster, and how So he the one thing that he kept saying was that you need to be open-minded enough to know what craft you're getting to the table, and also to understand the science behind it.
Right.
So the density of the bean, be it the elevation that it's grown in, be it the microclimate that is in. So it is so much essential for you to understand and bring the craft is really in marrying the two together.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
fair enough. I mean, and having said that, like even in India itself, like even if you have estates like me and a friend of ours, Pawan, as well, we keep talking about it, saying that there are so many, even if you're, like you said, in the same area, but the different estates will have different farming practices, different processing practices, and then at the end of the day, what comes out of it is a completely different bean. So I might have something that is super fruity and super winey and things like that, whereas my neighbor, just like about 20 plants away from me, sharing the same border, probably might have something super chocolatey and milky and things like that. So the fact that even India, and then you have these different regions where you have Chikmagalur, you have Coorg, you have Yercaud, you have and then you have the Nilgiris as well, which has these fantastic flavor profiles. And it kind of encompasses, you don't really need to go outside to see what kind of different flavor profiles are out there. I think India itself has like so many different major flavor profiles that fit all
Absolutely.
bills. It's amazing to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that point. And I don't think we need to look further than India to, of course, however obsessed we are of the West. Sometimes I feel that, there's so much potential to be explored here. And I think, if more roasters try and reach out to more farmers and more, and understand their farming practices and how, because they're so different just in terms of, we keep learning quite a bit from other producers whose farming practices are so much more different from the way that, our plantations do. And they're at such close proximities. So I think these are elements that, really changes the way that coffees are built. So I think, if as roasters, if we understand that, I think all of us will have more beautiful coffees coming up.
And I think there are a lot of roasters doing that as well. They are kind of putting out a lot of different processes which are exciting, and even though they are like super small lots, they will make it. It is an interesting. Especially now in the last couple of months, you're seeing a lot of different roasters coming up with all these estates which are probably producing nano lots and working, and there's a lot of excitement around it, which is quite nice to and refreshing to see. And having said that, also, like, all our coffees, all our estates are sustainable estates. We are like shade grown, and there's a lot of bird friendly, it's almost all bird friendly coffee. I wanted to ask you what your thoughts about sustainable coffee are, because I know you are a big promoter of sustainable coffee.
That's right. So see, for me, Komal, I think sustainability is a process. I don't think that you start becoming just the, it's a way that you adapt to, and it's a journey that you choose to go towards. For instance, whenever I see people, trying to replicate something that is not our own, let's say, Brazil type of farming, for instance, in the farming community.
Yeah.
It's, the climates are very different. The geographical conditions are very, very different. And our rainfalls are different.
Yeah.
The terrains are different. And I can give like 100 reasons why we cannot sustain that. And I think we have such a, which is, we're really gifted in a way that we've got something, the biodiversity rich plantations that we have in India. And I think there's so much that we can do about it. It's not always, I keep telling this to every producer that I meet, it's not always about quantity. Sometimes I think we need to look beyond that and look at quality sometimes. And I think it is rewarding. It can be rewarding if it is done the right way. There's a lot of hard work towards it. I'm not discounting that. But I think, somewhere along, we're all aiming at producing, in quantities, just getting that point of inspiration from Brazil. There's a lot of pointers to take from Brazil or any other coffee producing country which is doing great. I think Ecuador, for example, is I think 80% of the coffees that they produce is going towards specialty coffees.
Yeah.
So I think that's the stage that India needs to get to from a producing point of view. And, and even from, I think we have a large market in India, and we have so many roasters coming in the next few years. And we have so many exciting consumers who are looking at newer coffees. I keep saying it's like fine wines. You're never happy with one. You always are looking for something else. So you want to try something new. It's a discovery. It's an adventure. So as long as, for us, that was the intention of Coffee Mechanics as well. We start off with our own plantations and then add in a lot more plantations because it's as exciting as it is for the consumer.
Absolutely.
And from your point of micro lots, I feel for us at least, we look at micro lots or nano lots as an experimental process.
Absolutely.
It's sort of a step from bettering our processes as producers. And if we can give something new for the consumer from a tasting perspective or something that's surprising for them, that's something I think would be exciting. So though there is, there's some nanolots which cannot even be sustainable or they cannot even be commercial. So if it cannot be commercialized in, down a couple of years or months, couple of decades at least, then I think there is no point in doing that. So I always see nanolots as an experiment for the producers and for the roasters.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, that is what it is. It's the reason they're nanolots is because you're trying out something new and you want to see whether it works for your coffee. Even though somebody has tried it and said, okay, it might work, you don't know how your coffee is going to react to it. So it's
Correct.
it's always an experience, and at the end of the day, you have to kind of experience all the kind of different things that you think as a producer you want to do, to other than taking somebody else's word for it, because your coffee is always going to react differently to somebody else as a producer's coffee.
True. It's also where, from a producer's point of view, I keep, bringing this to relevance a lot of times, that just the number of hours of fermentation, for instance, just because it is 72 hours or 48 hours doesn't mean it's necessarily good.
Yeah.
Or I'm sure you and I have tanked a lot of process, experiments which are not even worthy of use.
Yeah.
So there are little things
they
like this.
Home consumption.
Home consumption. That's exactly. And I think that's not even for our consumption. I think our parents would hate us for this. So yeah. So a lot of this that we would have done and that wouldn't have even come out in this space. And why certain times that I find that they are, that we, at least from my perspective, why we price one or two lots that works higher, is so that we are able to get more access to for our next experiments.
Yeah.
That's the way that we look at the nanolots.
Yeah. So I think my next, it's really exciting because I know that you have different hats on. You have a hat of a producer, a coffee planter. You also do a lot of experiments on the coffee at the plantation. Then you also have a hat of a roaster and a cafe owner. So, and that's really interesting from a lot of people's point of view, because you are kind of seeing the entire chain in its entirety, like literally from seed to cup, as you say it. Tell me a bit more about what are the challenges, what are probably the differences that you have in this entire process, because I know that there are lots of different ways of looking at coffee as a producer as you would as a cafe owner. So tell me the similarities and the differences that you face when you have all these three different hats on.
Right. Yeah. I think it's a very, very difficult one, I must say. Because a lot of times you're overlapping, and it always puts you in a tough spot.
Yeah.
Where you'll ultimately have to decide what, because you have chosen a certain to serve a certain category of market, so you'll have to be very conscious in each step. So I think one similarity would be there's the amount of, on the negative side would be the amount of uncertainty that there is in all of this is something that we I don't even know. There's this, it's too much sometimes. And you really have to keep doing that check of reassuring, because it really doesn't, it's not book approved.
Correct.
It's not as per what are there in the books, but not all the time you need to do that, because you know that it's like I said, it's a journey that you have chosen. And as long as for us, it's like when we have a produce and when we work with some other producers, that we have been experimenting from past couple of years. It's not easy, and we don't work with we are not a corporate yet. We're a startup, and we're doing everything in house, and we're trying to sometimes we are running pillar to post to sort of get things done. And how these coffee producer and from a cafe owner perspective, but also the process is quite, it sort of brings us one other similarity that I see from as being a cafe owner and a coffee producer is that you have to be sort of hands-on in terms of what's going on.
Yeah.
Of course, you're not doing everything yourself, but just to see if things are in control, and if things, because it can easily, we are a country of jugaad. So, a lot of times this jugaad happens, which is not great for specialty coffee. So, that is one area where we keep, and then the other thing about probably it's also the amount of uncertainty. We don't really have a supply chain which is seamless, which is we're still building, and we're still trying to put process in place, and we hardly work with larger producers, to say. And you can expect certain, or not all the time you're working with people who are already like someone like you, who understands the process, who know how the process should be. So that's, in those cases it is easier. But for us, we have chosen to educate people on how they should do better for themselves, and try to move one step further, like every season. So we keep telling people that, start with 1 bag a year, start with 2 bags a year. And we have taken that, and sometimes it doesn't meet the parameters. So, then.
But that's something that it's like a learning process, and you kind of need to encourage if they are putting the effort in. And it's amazing of you guys that y'all are actually taking the bags in as well, because it's also hard work for you to make the coffee shine if it's not up to the standard. But it's something that if we so as a producer, it's amazing that you're encouraging other producers to make better coffee, or put a thought in their processing, put a little bit more effort. And that really, I mean, at the end of the day, I know that there are friends of mine on this call as well, and they would all agree, saying that it's important, and really, really important, that you process your coffee well. And if you're able to kind of push others to do the same thing, we'll all try and push the level of Indian coffee on the world stage on a higher, it'll be held in better regard than what it is right now.
Right.
And then there are some great people, I mean, great producers who are already doing this on the world stage in terms of Indian coffee. But there is a lot more that can be done, and a lot more producers also can do it.
Right. See, there's for me, it really started off as when we pick up coffees when we travel, and when we see that, I don't see Indian coffees anywhere. I hardly see them on packs, and I see Costa Rican, I see Colombian, I see African, I see Ethiopian, but there is no Indian coffee. So it's a constant. As coming from a coffee producing community, for me it was always a thing about, and we're 6th largest producers of coffee in the world.
Yeah.
So why is it that we are not recognized? And it's also one thing for us to understand that we lack in certain areas of expertise, so which we need to work on. And for us to make a global impact, it cannot be one person or two people. It has to be a community effort to reach where we want to be. So I think that's what the coffee community should be and should push towards and learn from each other. And I think even as producers, we see that, teaching somebody something would probably make them more or make them less. I think it's a dated thought. I think we are in a progressive world now.
I definitely think so. I mean, like, at least with anybody who I have interacted with, they have all been super forthcoming and, helped me absolutely at any given point of time. And be it processing, be it, any sort of help. We've always had this, we've had a great experience. So, and the fact that if we are able to share knowledge and bring each other
Right.
up, that's the best way of kind of bringing the entire system up and making sure that we are the 6th largest coffee producer in the world, and to show
Right.
with great pride.
Right. So I think, even from an educative front, I think when we started off, but that's one thing that we made sure that it's not a market which already knows about specialty coffee. So our constant effort is to educate the consumers and the producers on the other side, because essentially that's exactly what third wave coffee culture is supposed to be. You go down to though we are coffee producers ourselves, I think it's getting down to understanding the produce and the smaller holders especially, and trying to sort of bring newer coffees into the market. I think that should be the way that we all look at it, and that can only that can sort of bring us up on the global front.
Yeah, certainly. And so I know that you've kind of seen the culture, the coffee trends change over the years. What is it that you've kind of seen that is a constant, and what has kind of changed, and what is the newest trend at the moment in the coffee industry or the cafe scene, to be honest?
So I think there's so many of them. I mean, sometimes I think the way that it is moved now from the way it has definitely progressed much further than what we had ever imagined in this past 4 years. So, with the trends and how people are obsessive about earlier, I think when we was brewing a pour overs and we were carrying our grinders and our coffees and our pour over kits to an AeroPress when we traveled, I think people used to think, our family used to think that we're crazy. I'm glad that there are more crazier people coming out over there.
Yeah.
And trying to brew some excellent coffees at home. And I think that is what is going to be that is what is going to drive the trend. So that is one thing that I see really, really catching up. And from the cafe scenes, I think from an experience point of view, there are a lot of companies or coffee companies who have come forth and trying to do their bit in, though the directions might be different. I don't think it should, as long as it is in the direction towards popularizing coffee and popularizing just the techniques and making an experience out of it. I think we should all be supportive to every new trend that comes in. Like, we have people traveling from a distance, and they say that, we came here for a nitro coffee.
Okay.
So, and I was like, wow, that's something that I wanted to hear.
That's lovely.
Yeah, and when people come and I was like, I want this estate and I want a super bright espresso, is something that we loved hearing when we started off. That was 4 years back, and these were kids from colleges and schools who are doing some exciting projects that they were working on, and we were like, and they're not ashamed of, and they wanted to work with us to intern and learn more about coffee. So I think that is the trend, that's the positive trend that we see.
That's super. That's amazing. I mean, yeah, I mean, you're seeing lots of these exciting things coming up, and everyone is brewing these amazing coffees. And every time I'm on Instagram, I'm like, oh my God, I need to kind of I need to like up my skill of brewing and things, where I slowly get my kit in, and I realize like, oh my God, there is so much to learn. Like you go down the espresso rabbit hole, or you go down the AeroPress rabbit hole, or and I'm like, oh God, this is going to set me back a lot.
Constantly, I think it's constant effort that we all keep putting into, a matchup sometimes. And sometimes I have people calling me up and saying, have you tried this recipe on the AeroPress? And I'm, your this estate, this roast, try this. It's amazing. Yeah. So I think that kind of a thing, and we do try it out, and we do see that there are so many different ways of brewing that, just understanding the science of, let's say the extraction, at what temperatures, what compounds gets extracted is a vast subject that we can, we can explore.
Yeah.
And for us, that's an exciting, thing. And we keep doing these experiments in-house, and we have our customers who are as excited and who want to, okay, if you're doing that, I want to try this, and let's try this together. So I think that's the kind of community that is going to, that's really refreshing for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think we've kind of like covered quite a few. We can go on talking. I know, like, we've had conversations for 2 hours long, and we can still talk. Well, I think we'll open it up to whoever's on the call, ask them if they have any questions. Maybe I don't know, Ganga, if you are the host at this point of time, or if you're able to put me. Oh no, I think I am. That's fine. So if you have any questions, we're going to start taking questions, because yeah. So guys, we will kind of wrap this up here, and if you guys have anything further to kind of add to, always we'll put this recording on Instagram and YouTube as well. So you can always talk to Ganga or myself, and then I can pass the questions on to her as well. I think there's somebody who has a question. I will unmute him. Yes, go on.
Hello, ma'am. Hello, Ganga, ma'am. Hi, good evening.
Hi.
So this is Bibu from Bhubaneswar. So one thing I'd like to share with you. So it was 3 years before when I got introduced to specialty thing through an article on some Facebook or somewhere, I forgot. So, and the article was about coffee mechanics. Okay. So my enlightenment towards specialty and was through that article, and that through coffee mechanics. So I did a couple of research. Then after that, I have visited Bangalore 4 times, I guess. Every time I have planned to visit coffee mechanics, rain, traffic, something has happened, I couldn't. Always. So yeah, there's a craze. So I have traveled from Bhubaneswar to Bangalore, but couldn't. And that's one of my bucket list, not yet done in Bangalore. And my question is...
It's so lovely to hear from you, Bibu. And it's nice to hear such things. And I think we look forward to having you at the roastery.
Very soon, once the pandemic is over. That's the first thing I'll do.
Thank you.
Yes. So, ma'am, one more question. So, if any young generation is exploring the roasting and other thing, roasting particularly, so what are the scopes of learning the particular art of roasting at this point of time?
Sorry, I didn't catch you there.
And if anybody is exploring to learn roasting, so what are the scopes available in India for learning roasting?
I think there are a couple of roasters, if I'm not wrong, who are, who are offering roasting courses. If I'm right, Blue Tokai has some roasting courses that's available. And apart from that, I think also Indian plantation. There's one more institution who is offering a roasting course. Last time, Torch Coffee Roasters were down in India in collaboration with an institution who held a roasting course over here in India.
Okay.
So, Bibhu, there are a lot of places where you can learn roasting, but even otherwise, there are plenty of courses available online. That you can enroll and learn, and there is plenty of scopes considering that there are so many roasters coming up in India in the next few years.
Okay, sure. Thank you very much.
Sure. And you can get in touch with me sometime. I can give you the specifics of those institutions, and I'll be happy to help in that.
Sure, ma'am. I'll connect you through Instagram.
Sure.
If that's okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
of course.
Sure. Thank you.
Super, thanks, Vibhu. And I think there's somebody else who has a question. We will ask him to unmute.
Yeah, hi Komal.
Hi,
Hi
Sanjay.
Ganga.
How are you?
Okay. Ganga, this is an appreciation, obviously. Of course, apart from that, there is a question. So, um, I'm into coffee. I love coffee, and someone in my friend list, one of my close friends, recommended me to get a Coffee Mechanics coffee, and I was very surprised that someone who is not into coffee at all is suggesting a Coffee Mechanics coffee, and it is a great thing to listen to. Now, coming to the question, we have been seeing a trend where states are trying to reach out to masses and understand exactly how people love their coffee. Same with Agama and Coffee Mechanics, the way the vertical integration has been done. I've seen the same thing with Harley State as well, where they have their classic coffees as well. So, how do you see this trend going further ahead in the future?
I think from our perspective, or at least now, many producers are sort of coming forward to, they are experimenting with the coffees, and the market's opening up in India. So that is one point why, earlier, otherwise, most of the good coffees that were exported are now we're opening a lot more into the Indian market and exploring, and they're seeing that, there are a lot of people who are willing to try different coffees, and it is moving in terms of the wine and that kind of thing. So I think that's the potential that a lot of estates see. And at Agama, what we do is the ones who are not yet in sync with this movement, we sort of try and get them to jump on the bandwagon as well, because as many producers there are, I think that is it is as exciting for the consumer. So it is for us, Coffee Mechanics, like I said, is a platform, and for every other producer who has their own retail brand or a retail presence, is mostly to understand, because there are two different segments altogether. Running a coffee plantation is, like my dad says, 2 full-time jobs. It's only because our families are very supportive and they run the plantation, we are able to do this on this side of the things. We are not really 100% on the plantations. Our visits are probably a couple of times a month, and we try to get in sync with what work is happening there, and how we could move it towards modernizing it and mechanizing it in small ways that we can. That's the place that we get involved in. But the larger part of the work is handled by our family still. So the integration is really, we get a feedback from the retail perspective, which is a direct consumer connect, and it helps us really understand to create what a consumer wants. Otherwise, the producer and the consumer is a lot of disconnect. As much as we say that there is, coffee is the most traded commodity, I keep saying that it's the worst thing to happen to coffee, because it's changed that many hands, and there's no traceability. There is no sense of ownership of that coffee from where it's coming. So towards the end of it, it's not working for the producer, nor is it working for the consumer. So this changing landscape is something that I see as a positive trend.
Thanks for the answer. That's a great answer actually.
I think we've got another question. Thanks, Gautam. I think there's Sanket who wants to ask a question. Sanket, I've unmuted you. We can't hear you, Sanket.
Hello.
Yeah.
So hi Komal, hi Ganga. Thanks for hosting us this evening. So I have a pretty basic question. So my team and I, we're a small team, and we're trying to get into specialty coffee roasting. I would need an advice, like what's the advice that you would give to a first generation roasters? Like we all are from completely different professions and we're geographically at a different location right now. But the plan is to get together and get something going on probably by the middle of next year. So what would be the advice for first generation roasting company from you?
Well, hi Sanket. So I
Hi.
think, we are a first generation roasters as well. So we started completely from scratch and we had no idea of, where it is, what we were doing. So I would say our journey so far, I mean, it's just been a learning of, we realized that start to get roasting and trying to get an understanding of how roasting works. Maybe if you can get a small sample roaster to begin with, and experiment and see how your market is responding to. And also don't have a lot of consumers have to be appreciative of it. I think take one step at a time. You can always, considering if you're serious about taking this as full time, then of course definitely invest in a small sample roaster and it'll always come handy. And try out different coffees from different places, roast it, taste it, learn the science behind it, because that's very, very important. How each coffee responds to heat and at what level you need to control the heat to the airflow. So all of these does depend a lot on the outcome of your coffees. So I would say get a sample roaster, and we all started off from a small team, and that's how great things happen. So don't be pulled down by the size of your team. It's just thought that matters, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
I think that was a great answer. Any other questions, Sanket? Anybody else? Or we can kind of wrap this up, and you can always ask questions to Ganga on their Instagram or Facebook or anything else as well, on their website probably. So if there aren't any questions, I'm going to wrap it up and say thank you, Ganga, so much for being with us and giving us this amazing insight into the world of seed to cup journey of yours.
Thank you very much for having me, Komal. Thanks for being such an amazing host, and thanks to everybody who joined and made it interactive and really nice. So
yes, thank you once again. If everyone's able to put on their cameras, and I can do a quick picture, and then we can wrap the session up. Sorry guys for that, my dogs are going crazy. Anyway, so if we're able to all switch on the cameras, and then we will click a picture and we will end the session. I see everyone slowly turning that on. Super. So, right. As I say, cheese, everyone.
cheese.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, everyone. And I will speak to you soon. Thank you once again. Have a lovely Sunday evening.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Komal. Thanks, everyone. And if you have any further questions, please connect with us on Instagram or any other page. Lovely, lovely having this chat, Komal. Thank you.
Thank you.